Halito, Chumachogma. My name is Lynn Brooks. I am a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma, and I am a transplant to New Jersey. And I'm really excited to be here in the Montclair Art Museum. And today we're going to specifically talk about Shan Goshorn's Carlisle basket called Educational Genocide. Shan Goshorn is one of my favorite artists personally, and she spent her summers in Cherokee, North Carolina, surrounded by the culture, surrounded by people there, and they encouraged her to continue and to pursue her art. You know, she talks a lot about how her schools didn't appreciate, Native art at the time. Fine art was fine art and Native art was something else. And so she became someone who was really good at a lot of mediums, but really chose to do and use her talents through an idea of messaging. Everything she did was about representation, right? Like Native representation, about how to pick a medium that was able to give her the chance to say what she needed to say. And all of these things were done for the benefit of Native people and people being able to question stereotypes, misconceptions they've had about Native people, or even ask questions about sovereignty. The pieces that we see now, where she first started doing the double weave, exhibited here in the Educational Genocide basket, she was one of only 14 people alive that could do that, which is phenomenal. She's using and picking weaving styles that's going to maximize the message that she's doing, and having Richard Henry Pratt's speech. On the outside, Richard Henry Pratt kind of took it on himself to start a federal investment in education and the creation of the first federal boarding school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. And that for me starts a really dark period of history. It really makes us focus on the stark reality and the steps of individuals like religious organizations, but also the work of the federal government in saying it's time to eradicate Native people once and for all. It's time to cut that connection between language, between culture, so that one generation can no longer speak to another generation. They pushed us into these big dresses, these gentlemen, looking kind of in a militaristic style, these things that were so different from how children arrived. And so all of this stuff represents the main view of what to do with the Indian at the time. So the outside of the basket is entirely about the growing public outcry to educate Native people and to make them into white society. But then on the inside of this basket, in its double weave, you find the names of the people that are enrolled, right? And so you have at the heart of the basket, the inside where the things that are carried. You've got the outside, which is facing the world, but then you have the inside and it's the names of everyone there. The way forward has to be an acknowledgement of the past, but also the continual representation of the resiliency. Native art is never about just the historic trauma. And so for me, when I see this, there's no beginning and no end in this weave, but that kind of circularness, and it represents for me that resiliency, and, of the Native spirit, of Native people in general, of Indigenous communities, around the world. And so this whole exhibition has been for me about making purposeful space for Native knowledge through Native art. And it is all about representation, and it forefronts Native people. It prioritizes Native experiences in a way that I haven't seen done in a really long time. All you have to do to teach anything that seems like a sensitive point in history related to Native American history is to use Native artists. Native art has a long history of keeping communities alive. And so if you look at each piece as having a series of ancestors behind them, and having generational knowledge between them, and that's being presented for your viewing, and that you get to interpret that, in so many different ways, I think that's beautiful. I'd ask students in my own classroom to think about histories that are difficult, his family histories or cultural histories, and then ask yourself as you look, why do you think that the colors were chosen? Why do you think, Shan used paler on the outside and red on the inside? Why wouldn't you do it in reverse and put the put the script on the inside versus the names on the outside. There's a really strong intention for you to look at this and to learn something specifically with Shan's basket. I mean, even the title, Educational Genocide. There's no mincing of words with the word genocide. There is a true conversation. She's almost started it by giving you this basket and asking you to respond, and then you're just waiting for her to respond back. And I think that feeling is how you connect with the artists themselves. It's how you connect more deeply to the piece. But I also think that students should always feel any particular way they want, respond emotionally in any way, knowing that you're going to respond to some things more than others. And so I think that's the most amazing thing about Shan Goshorn, is that she's able to do that for us.